What's there? What do you see? It's what? A bunch of COVID viruses drawn by Hopkins art students. Attack them! Fire the cannon! Fire! On 1, 2, 3! Ahoy, class! The storm is cleared. I have my first mate back. All is well. The sun is peeking through the clouds, and it looks like it's going to be a glorious day. And besides that, it's always a glorious day to art. All right, today you are going to need a pencil, an eraser, and several pieces of paper. We've got some drawing to do. Thank you all so much for sending in your drawings to the Google Classroom. I have looked at a lot of them, and as you saw, many of them appeared in our last little clip there. Sorry for those of you who drew in purple or it was just a pencil sketch. It didn't show up due to the green screen situation. But thank you so much, and I really enjoyed looking at them. And then today we're going to talk about how you drew some of your canisters, and we're going to look at the good, the bad, the ugly, and how you can do to improve on that in the future. Today we're also going to start a new project, so you're going to need multiple sheets. So first things first, daily doodle. Today it's going to be sea monster. That's right, draw me your kraken. Whatever monster you imagine in the deep, go ahead and draw that now. While you're doing your daily doodle today, I want to talk to you a little bit about the artist my cat is named after, and that is George Catlin. George Catlin was born in the late 1700s and was a painter and travel writer of indigenous peoples living in the plains in the middle of the United States. And so he traveled around in the 1830s and lived with tribes for a time, took extensive notes on their customs and how they spent their time, how they hunted, looked at their aspects of their spiritual life, and he recorded all of these in his journal, which I'm holding a copy of. He was also a painter, even though he studied to be a lawyer. That didn't work out for him, and instead he decided to do something different, and obviously he was a very gifted artist. So he went out to study the peoples, and he produced over 500 oil paintings of indigenous peoples and how they lived. Many of his works today are found in the National Museum of the American Indian in Washington, D.C. And I've been there many times and have seen them displayed in person, and they're lovely. So at the time Catlin came to me, I was studying to be a historian of Native American Indians, and he came to me my second to last week of my master's program, and just at the time I was using this book. So that is how George Catlin came into my life. So you guys can take all the time today that you need to do your daily doodle. So I'm going to hang out with Bob Ross for a few seconds while you guys work on your daily doodles. So feel free to color those in any way you want, and then don't forget to upload them to our Google Classroom. That would be great. So go ahead and pause now, and when you come back, I'm going to have flipped the computer back to its book stand, and we're going to go ahead and get into some drawing today. So stand by, pause now, see you soon. All right, welcome back. Today, I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about some of the problems with your cylinder forms that I noticed when I was reviewing your work. So, great efforts all, particularly since I'm not there to help and guide you as you're going. So I've left a lot of you individual comments, and if you were able to upload your image onto our Google Classroom, I discovered a great feature is that I can actually click on individual portions of your drawing and comment on that. So if you've been emailing it to me, that's just fine. Just know that I'm not able to give you as specific comments as I am if it's uploaded as an image to the Google Classroom. So maybe we can get a thread started about how you guys are pulling that off for those of you who have learned the tricks of the trade. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, let's look at our cylinders that some of you drew from last time. So I saw three major problems when I looked at them. And these are all pretty common problems when you're first learning to draw. So I replicated these issues here. So let's start with this one. So on this cylinder, we've got a lovely elliptical top. The bottom matches it pretty well. Remember, you want to echo that curve of the top on the bottom, so that's pretty good. But these interior angles, bunk, 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 and bunk, by angles, I mean the curves that should go around the can, are not actually curves. They were drawn straight across. And that just totally wrecks the illusion of this can being three-dimensional. And we see the same sort of problem happening on the middle can here, except that instead of the straight curves being the interior lines, a lot of you drew a straight curve as the bottom line. So remember, that straight curve, to continue this illusion of this being a 3D object, you want that to be a curve, not a straight line. And all of these curves, and see, it's easy enough to fix. You just go to the bottom, do a little magic erasing, and all of a sudden, that looks pretty good, right? So remember that this curve, and this curve, and this curve, and this curve, and this curve, they should all be the same, as close as you can make them, and that will really help continue that illusion. So let's now look at the last one. So here we've got all of these curves all aligned. That looks pretty good. And in fact, if we cover the top, that looks like a pretty cylindrical object. But look at the top. And this is a really common mistake when you first start drawing. This top, instead of being more of an elliptical, more oval shaped, it's almost a true circle. And then the can extends. And if you were looking at the can head on, you wouldn't see the body of the can in the same way, in the same angle that if it were just standing. So you have to think about that as you're drawing. So make sure that you follow through with the angles being the same all the way down, and that will get you really close to being there and having created a great 3D object. All right, let's look at the second problem that I saw pretty frequently. And that's problems with light. So remember that we talked about with the last time that I wanted you guys to pretend that light was coming to you from the front. And a lot of you guys did this. I even saw some arrows and some labels saying light this way. And I was like, yes, they got it, thank you. All right, so I love to see the fact that you're paying attention. Now we need to talk about how to finesse these lines so it really looks good. So what I saw a lot of, and I did this a little bit, but I've learned to do it in a way that's a little bit more finessed and sophisticated. A lot of you guys just drew dark lines all the way across the center and then did this. And that's fine to clean up lines, but do you see the problem that the lines don't fade from darkest over here at the edge to the lightest in the center? All you've done by doing this is just taking out the center, and it doesn't really give us that illusion of light. So what you want to do is to gradually fade that. Now for a second, I'm going to do this because we're doing this in retrospect. The best way to do it is to draw it light first and to darken later. But since I've already drawn these lines, and many of you might be in that same position, you can take an eraser. In my case, I'm going to use a kneaded eraser. So this is a kneaded eraser, like knead as you would to knead dough. And it's called that because when you first get it, it's in a sort of a hard little square, and you have to knead it in your fingers. And it becomes kind of, it's stiffer than putty. It doesn't leave a residue. It's really great for working with charcoal. That's what I used it for when I was in art class. But what I'm going to do is to pull up some of these pencil lines so that I can lighten it without smearing it. And you can see they pull up really nicely. when you use a kneaded eraser like this. All right, so let's make these lines settle. I am going back to today I'm using a 6B because I discovered that that shows up pretty well, just about as well as the ebony pencil, and it's a lot easier to erase for me. So back here should be your darkest point. And as you trace around the object, and remember that we're going to do so using light, sketchy lines. We're not going to commit hard because it's really hard to erase lines that you've committed to. So you don't want to commit till you're sure. All right. So as I'm going, I'm lightening up as I get to the center, and I'm darkening up as I get to the back. All right. The darkest line on this particular piece with the light coming from the front is going to be this edge right here. This is the furthest point away from my eye, and if the sun is behind me, it's going to be the furthest point away from the sun. And we'll talk about the edge lines in just a minute. So you want to start by darkening up at the edges and lightening as you get towards the center. So darken at the edge, lighten towards the center. And try to do this on a continuum. A continuum is a point. Think about, for example, we talked about a value scale with the elements of art. And if you think about the value scale being from a grayscale or an achromatic scale, it goes from the blackest of blacks to the whitest of whites. Well, that's in essence what you're doing here, right? You're creating a grayscale on your line, which is part of the reason that we talk about that. It's a really important element of art. So you're just going to sketch around, finish this up. All right. Now, what I might do is if I think I've gotten my center just a little dark, I'm going to pull up just a little bit with the eraser. But ideally, I should have done it pretty well to begin with. Okay? Now, let's talk about these side edges. Where this line meets and this line meets, these should be the same color. They should be the same density of line in order to complete this illusion, because this part of the line is just as far back as the vertical line that makes the side of the cam. So many of you have really dark lines in the center, but it doesn't match this side and it looks funny. It doesn't complete the illusion. So to make that illusion really work, make sure that your lines are the same thickness and the same darkness where they meet on the edge, and that will really, really help. All right, so I'm going to come back and do the same thing here. And if you look, now my line density matches. All right, I hope that helped. So if you have any other questions, you can email me or leave a comment on the side of your assignment after you submit it, and I can answer your questions. But once you get all of these things going, you should get really great optical illusions with your objects. Okay, we've reoriented because I realized I forgot to tell you that you are going to again probably need to read your parents' kitchen for a few items. So again, we're not going to damage anything. We're just going to borrow these to draw. So ask permission and be gentle with the food objects, particularly since right now it's a little hard to get to the grocery store. So today you are going to need boxes. So think spaghetti, think cereal, big box. It's my house. You definitely have coffee filters. Raisins? Why not? Whatever you have laying around in the pantry is just fine. No boxed goods at your house? Books work just as well. May I recommend Sense Sensibility and Sea Monsters as a great theme book for today. So grab up some items. Bob Ross and I will wait. Bob, where'd you go? Bob, get your stuff, get pencils, get probably 2 or 3 sheets of paper, and we'll see you in a minute. Do you have your stuff yet? Do you? And we're back. And we are going to start with a little warm-up activity of drawing three-dimensional cubes. Now, many of you draw cubes where you can see all of the sides. It's like the cube is clear and you can see through it. That is not what I want you to do today. Today, I want you to draw solid cubes. So start by drawing a square. I find it's easier to draw my verticals first. And remember, these vertical lines should always be parallel. They should never cross. So if these went on, and sometimes it's easiest to see if you lay some pencils beside it. If you line these pencils up, they remain pretty straight. All right, so that's what you're aiming for. Don't cheat and use a ruler. Start now and train your eye to learn how to do this. And yes, it takes time and you're gonna draw wonky lines, and I guarantee you're gonna see me draw some wonky lines today. So it's always a learning process. But learn to draw those verticals just with your eye and using your perception, and eventually you'll start to get the hang of it. So then once you've drawn the verticals, go ahead and connect your horizontals. Clean up any little bit of overhang, and then you'll be good to go. All right, so now we have a basic square. With the square, I'm going to draw this just a little darker so you guys can see it. Sort of glancing at the monitor and realizing my lines are light. Okay, so with the square, you are going to then draw the lines that go back and make this a 3D object. So try to visualize the cube that you're going to draw in your head. Think about the cube that we made for your Elements of Art box, for example. That's the shape we're going for. And again, you're not going to be able to see through this shape. It's a solid object. So I'm going to start here. And the angle that I have just drawn is going to set the angle for here, obviously there, and then also here. All 3 of these angles will be exactly the same. So you may need to rock back and forth on this, draw lightly over it to get that muscle memory of how it feels to draw. And then you're going to transfer that muscle memory down below. Try to estimate where you think it is, but you know what? You can also run out past it and then correct it later. Sometimes if you draw it a little short or a little long, your brain wants you to then draw it on an angle to try to connect that. And you would wind up with something wonky that would look like that. And obviously that's wrong, right? That's a common problem when you're first learning to draw 3D objects. So make it longer and then you won't be tempted to do that. You'll be able to see where it goes. All right, so got my muscle memory. That feels good. That feels good. So now I'm gonna come over here and apply that same feeling. All right, now we need to connect these. And I'm going to draw this one out a little longer. This is going to be a big box. Now, this line, the line I'm about to draw, again, they are all going to be parallel with each other. They are not going to intersect. So get your muscle memory here and apply that across. Oops, except I'm doing a bad job at it. Remember what I said about doing wonky lines? There you go. All right, so get that feeling. Then I'm going to bring it back. Bring this up to meet it, that out. There we go. And I'm going to correct that a little bit because I could tell it was just a little off, which is throwing that angle a little off. Not a perfect square. That's all right. It'll be okay. Now, this angle here, sorry, line, and this line here, and the line I'm about to draw here, they are all also going to be parallel with each other. So bring this straight down, just like this one. I'm gonna feel that and bring it down. And then correct any overhang. All right, decent cube. Not a perfect cube, that's okay. If we look, my back line is just a little off. Not much, be really about there. And then that would change. That's one thing about drawing 3D objects. You move one thing and then you gotta fix everything else. And this is why I told you to bring your eraser. If you don't have an eraser, just keep going, it's fine. You can use a different colored pencil, different colored pen, although drawing in pen is a real commitment. All right, so there's your first one. Now, I want you to go ahead and repeat this exercise 3 to 5 more times, all right? And I started earlier doing some. Trying to get it so you can see, there we go. And notice that I've tried different angles. So go ahead and do drawings of your cubes with angles going in different directions. So I tried one going this way, and then I tried seeing the other side. And then I drew one where I could see for what is you, the top, but for me is the bottom, right? Let me flip this around. And if you do that, you get practice drawing in multiple directions. And you can see mine aren't perfect. I'm looking at this one, it's got a little wonky situation, and that's all right. We are just practicing. So get in some practice. You can pause now, and then when you're done that, come on back and we'll talk about today's project. Okay, it's now time to get your pencils, get a fresh sheet of paper, and grab that box of spaghetti or whatever you have laying around, and we are going to draw 3-dimensional boxes today. So now that you've gotten some practice drawing some cubes, this should be a nice transferable skill. So I'm going to set my box in front of me, which means it is off screen for you guys. But ideally you want your box about a foot away from where you're drawing it, and you might want to elevate it on another box or whatever is laying around, and use that so that you can see different sides. So ideally you would want to see something where you've got a little, I don't know how to do this on a camera upside down. This is harder than it looks. All right, you want to, Sause is struggle busing. There we go. All right, so you want to set it so that you can see a little bit of one edge, a little bit of the top, and then also the side. So get it so you see 3 sides at once. All right, got it? Good. All right, what I find is easiest to do is to pick, let's say, a corner and start from there. So I'm going to start drawing this corner of the box of spaghetti. That is the one facing me. And uh-oh, the first mate has just made a landing on the desk. Catlin, cat. Thanks, buddy. I'm gonna send you out in the ship again if you don't behave. All right, so I'm going to draw that edge. So nice vertical line down. Again, I'm using sketching motion. Not really committing. I'm going heavier than you guys should because you need to be able to see what I'm doing. I'm also using a 6B pencil, which is a really soft, dark pencil. Most of you guys are going to be using a 2B pencil, which is a nice soft pencil, but it'll give you a lighter line unless you're really pressing hard. Okay, now I've got that. I want to go ahead and draw, and it's going to run right off the page because I don't know why I set this up this way, but I'm going this direction. And your things can run off the page too. So I'm going to give this box a bottom. Not the greatest straight line I've ever drawn. Let's do this. There we go. All right, now let's connect that and give it a top. Or for what you guys is going to be the bottom. Gets confusing. All right. Now, mine is going back on an angle. And here's the great thing when you're drawing with an object. You can actually go ahead and feel with your finger and your pencil, as long as you don't leave any marks. You can feel the angle that that's going back on and transfer that to your drawing. So mine's something like this. And then again, just like it would with the 3D cubes we were drawing, this line and this line are going to be vertical. All right. Now, well, mine's sort of vertical. Let's clean that up. All right, let's do the top. So this line here is going to connect to this line here, which means I need to bring this up a little bit. And that is all part of the process, is learning where lines are going to stop and start. Okay, that looks decent. Now, let me clean up this line a little bit. By the way, you don't have to have printer paper at home to be drawing with this. Notebook paper, back of the envelope, gum wrapper, all fine by me. All right, so there's the edge of our spaghetti box. Now, let's talk about light. What would we see? What would be the darkest thing if our light is coming this way? Well, unfortunately, if our light is coming from behind us, this edge here is going to be the lightest. So I'm going to use my handy dandy eraser and lighten up some of these lines. All right, so this is why I tell you guys to draw light. Now, the darkest bit is going to be this line right here. And this line coming into it, it's going to be just about as dark as this one, depending on how the light is hitting. Now, here gets to be the fun part. For the lines that are coming on the angles, they're going to be a value scale. The darkest bit is going to be at the back, and then they're going to get light as they come forward. Remember, just as we talked about the cylinders, to make sure that where your lines connect, they match in thickness and they match in color. And that helps create our 3D illusion. So let's do this on the bottom. All right, and I think I got a little dark there. There you go. So that is a very reasonable looking box, edge of a box of spaghetti. Okay, so now I'm going to ask that you do 3 to 5 on your own at home with whatever you've got laying around. I did a couple earlier. So as you can see, I've got this box here. I've got my little raisin box, so you can see the flap. All right, so go ahead, work today mostly on getting your angles right, starting to pay attention to the light. It's not quite as easy to do on square objects as it is round, at least not at first. But think about that. And if you've got a light at home that you can move around and shine it on different parts, if you want to show that, that would be great. And then draw me a little arrow letting me know where your light is. All right, so I'm going to reorient. And I don't know if you can see this. We've got the first mate is showing me his best side right at the moment. So, from the decks of the USS Corona, thank you so much for joining me. And go ahead and send me your drawings. I'm so excited to see you guys, and we will see you next time. Ahoy! Catlin, do you have anything to tell our art class? Do you? No? Tell them. Tell the people. So quiet when it's not food time. So quiet. Bye.